And we are a go, Mr. Jaime Vendera. Man, how long has it been since we've seen each other? Did I have a kid?
No.
I didn't
It's
think
been a
so.
while. I mean, I think you were still playing music. I mean, I might run into you here or there, but that's it. I mean, I see your mom.
Now, listen, so you know, I still play music.
Oh, you
But-
okay? You play,
yeah.
but you play in the church band, right?
Yeah. So I play a lot in the church, and then, I write things like that. I do a lot of singing.
Good.
Which is
Good.
A whole nother conversation for a whole other time.
I heard you had a good coach, but I don't want to get into that.
See, listen, this is what I'll say: is all the good stuff about my voice, which probably isn't a whole lot, I would give you compliments on, and all the bad stuff is just me, still singing bad.
But we all have good and bad. We're human, so
There you go. So you and I, let's see, we first met. How did we first meet? Because I know we did coaching.
it was. I don't know if your mom found. It's been so long ago because I worked with your entire band. I don't know. Maybe I didn't have lessons with your brother because he was just playing drums.
Yeah.
But was it Aaron?
Yep, Aaron.
And I might have worked with Alan as well and Greg. So I worked with everyone in the band. Was it Suffer at the time?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
For those of you guys who don't know, I grew up playing metal and was one of the bands I was in. We got hooked up with Jamie, and I feel like it would have just been she found out about you.
It must have been because I was actually keeping a low profile here, which was kind of hard at the time because you probably found me in 05 or 06, and that was right after I'd been on Mythbusters. I set a world record. My first book came out.
And things got crazy.
And things got really crazy.
Well, and what I think's wild is we got to working with you, and years later, I realized one of my best friends growing up was related to you, Nick.
Oh, Hansel?
Yeah.
No, you know what? My wife says last night, did you see Nick's post?
His hair?
Yeah. And I was like, he was like a trendsetter. I said, don't you mean cousin copier?
Yeah, exactly.
And
I seen that.
Yeah. And I said, don't cut it because, we have to have these the long-haired men club, and no one else in my family has long hair except the women, so.
Yeah. Well, see, I just tell everyone I took a lot of it off the top and put it on my face. So, and I can't get rid of it. My wife won't let me. She says I tell everyone she either loves my beard or hates my face. I can't figure out which one it is.
You know what? I know my wife hates my face because I shaved mine off, and she's like, "Why'd you do that? You look like you're 12." And the funny about my hair, because I cut my hair off in like 09 or something,
Really?
and I mean it was short, like a half inch. And we had went to Scott Stith. I don't know if you know my guitarist. He actually recently played in Suffer. I'll take him with me when I do TV shows or workshops around the world. So we were in the Middle East. We were in Bahrain, and we walk into a coffee shop. And I'm ordering a coffee, and the person looks up, and they're ringing me up, and they're like, Mythbusters. I'm like, how in the world do you know that? My hair's cut off and everything. But I'm like, wow, I got one fan around the world.
There you go. Well, so now for people that don't know you and don't know what you do, Jamie, tell everyone a little bit about yourself as far as what you do now.
Okay, so I'm going to look at Marty here, but I've been a singer my entire life. At 3 years old, I fell in love with Elvis Presley. I remember running through my grandmother's house. She had the record player on, and it was Jailhouse Rock, and I had my shoes off, and I stopped. I'm sliding in my socks, and I stop, and I hear that voice. And I became enamored. I'm so excited I can't even talk. And from then on, I sang. I sang in school plays and choirs. At 16, I joined a bar band called Flint. I played piano and keyboard too. So I was a pop boy band. I loved New Edition back in the 80s, Wham, Ready for the World. But then when I got into Flint, it was, Poison and Guns N' Roses and AC/DC. So since I was young, and they were a lot older than me, they're like, well, you got young vocal cords, so you do all the high stuff.
Oh, that's hilarious. How old were you?
I was 16 when I joined. I was still in high school, and I'm playing out 3 to 4 nights a week. It was murder. I didn't know anything about vocal technique. My warm-up was to sing Talk Dirty to Me by Poison, because it was a low song before I go into Def Leppard or whatever. And the next morning, I'd always have a sore throat. I couldn't talk. And I had to wait all day and then drink a little bit of water and sing Talk Dirty to Me to play that night. So then that's when I got interested in studying voice. And I went to a few coaches around where we live in Southern Ohio. And no disrespect, But I had so many lessons around here and didn't learn a thing. They didn't understand it. There's this misconception that if you are born a certain way and your voice is deep, that's it. You can't extend your range. That's a fallacy. You know, I moved to LA. I studied voice at Musicians Institute. I fell in love with 80s glam bands like Vinnie Vincent Invasion and Nitro. And I met Jim Gillette from Nitro. And, you know, when you hear Jim talk, it's like this. And then if you heard the song Freight Train, I mean, he's hitting soprano Ds like they're nothing.
Oh, yeah.
So I knew there was a connection. So I studied his program, Vocal Power. And then I took it beyond that and played in many bars, many bands since then. But in 1996, and it's kind of ironic, a friend of mine calls me up and he says, "Hey, how do you sing so high?" You know, and I said, "Why?" He says, "Well, I want you to teach me to sing higher." And I said, "Well, why you want to do that?" He said, "I love this band called Dream Theater." And they have the song called Pull Me Under, and I can't hit the notes. I want to sing it. And I swear to you, James, if you're watching, we've joked about this before. I said, I can't stand that band. I'm not into the singer.
Really?
Yeah, that was in 96. And he came over, and I know all these scales, you know, these vocal scales, and I was kind of burnt out and had my keyboard sitting there, and I had what's called a pitch wheel. And it's just like a little round harmonica, and I thought, let's try something. And I blew on a note, and I said, try this. Just go match the note and go, eh. We're just going to do a slide. And I swear to you, Marty, in 45 minutes, he had gained 5 notes in his full voice, not falsetto in his real voice. And he was hitting the A that's in Pull Me Under. And I was like, wow, that's pretty amazing. I bet I could teach voice using this. And so I continued, and I developed my method. And that was 96. So I taught for about 4 years. And then in the January 2000, I thought, I'm going to write a book on all of this. And I was working in Athens, Ohio. I was a construction worker. So I'm driving to work. It's like an hour, 45 minutes away. I don't stay in a hotel. I just want to drive. And I'm using this little pitch wheel. And I'm going through these exercises for like an hour and a half on the way there, hour and a half on the way home. Having students here and actually trying out this stuff with them, and it just developed. You know, then I'm also playing in bars. I was playing with a band called Purple Jester at the time, so I'm keeping my voice up, and it just kind of unfolded. And so I remember as I was finishing the book, I became friends with Jim Gillette years ago. You know, I saw him, he'd worked with me, and we interviewed him for one of my websites, and he calls me. He says, "Hey, you want to be on TV?" And this was in several years after, so 2004. And I was like, yeah, doing what? He says, shattering glass with your voice. And if you've seen Nitro, if you've seen Freight Train, that's what he's known for. And I tell you what, I was scared to death. Inside, I thought, there's no way I can do this. But I couldn't let my vocal coach, Jim, down. And I said, yes, I'll do this. And he says, don't worry, don't be nervous. You got me in your back pocket, I'll teach you. He taught me over the phone, and this was to
Wait.
Yeah.
He taught you over the phone?
So to back up a little bit, if you've heard of the show Mythbusters.
Yeah. A big fan of Mythbusters, actually.
Well, they had reached out to Jim because they wanted to prove whether a singer could shatter glass with their voice or not, and they were going to be on Good Morning America, and that was one of the myths they wanted to prove or disprove. So Jim said, look, I'm busy, I got 2 kids, I don't want to do it, but I know who can do it. So they sent me wine glasses, they sent me an amplifier, he taught me over the phone, I set it up, pow, 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 I blew several up, flew to New York, did the show, very successful. And then 2 or 3 months later, we actually filmed in San Francisco to shatter one without amplification. Because on Good Morning America, we did it with an amp. And I'll tell you what, I was nervous. I didn't think I could do it. You know, I've seen Jim do it. I know he's done it without amps. But we did Good Morning America in November of 2004. And then by December, I started practicing. And I was actually working here. I was working in Ashland, Kentucky, and it was the funniest thing. One of my coworkers, Paul DeHart, I love this guy. He says, "Bring these wine glasses in. It's just you and me." And we're at the hospital, and we're tying up rebar. He says, "Bring them in. It's cold out." He said, "We'll shout at them as we're working." I'm like, "You're nuts. People are going to walk by." But we did. We had a couple wine glasses sitting there. We tie a little bit of rebar or whatever, scream at these things, and could not break a one. This went on for several weeks. So we're driving home on a Friday, and I got a migraine from doing this all day. I'm sick of it. I don't even want to think about it. Now, I have another really good vocal coach named Elizabeth Sabine, or God rest her soul, she's passed away. But I remember talking to her about it like the week before. I said, I've been trying to break these glasses. I can't do it. And she says, well, you know technique. You know to bear down, to support. She said, I want you to push even harder. So we're driving home. I got a migraine, and Paul's over sitting next to me, and he's screaming at this wine glass. And here it is. Yay! And I get mad, because it's driving me nuts. And I grab it from him, and I think about Liz, and I push down, and I scream, and pow, I blew it up in my face.
In the truck?
As I'm driving.
Oh, my gosh.
And I'm screaming, and Paul's like, are you all right? Thinking I got cut or something. I said, I'm ecstatic. I went home and blew up 7 more that night.
Wow,
I had figured it out. I pushed the Mythbusters. I said, hey, I can do it. I can do it. Yeah, we'll get to you. I can do it. I'll get to you. And my stepson, Ryan, he says, film it. So we filmed one. This is back before iPhones. I had to film it on a camcorder and transfer it to my PC, and I emailed it, and I kid you not, within an hour they called me, says, hey, we want you here on this day. Can you be here? I said, absolutely. So it all kind of fell into place. I'd written Raise Your Voice, my first book. Mythbusters, we did the show, and it blew up. I started getting calls from record companies to teach singers, and now I've worked with people like Dream Theater. Right now I'm working with Prevail. I've worked with Starset, just Hinder. All these different rock bands are calling me to keep them in shape on the road. So it's been a dream come true. I mean, a lot of my idols who I loved in the 80s, I'm teaching. And ironically, a couple years ago, Jim Gillette, he's like, hey, I want to work on like the gritty stuff. I need you to be my coach.
Really?
So we're on Skype. I'm teaching Jim Gillette. And he laughs. He says, ha, 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 the student becomes the teacher.
I mean, how did that feel, like having your teacher reach out?
I'm telling you what, it was one of the best feelings. For one thing, I remember Jim and I lost contact. I used to go to concerts when he was with Nitro and bug him, and I'm using your program, and I hadn't talked to him in a dozen years, and I wanted to interview him. And my wife and I were not home. This is before Mythbusters. We get home and the phone rings, and I pick it up and I hear Jamie. And my wife said my jaw dropped and my eyes got this big, and she said she knew Jim Gillette was on the other end because I was such a fan. And so to come full circle, and Jim and I are still close friends. I've taught his kids, I've taught him. It was just an amazing feeling. So
no, and I think what I think is really interesting is, so you went out to LA not to learn to teach, but just to help your own vocal ability.
Yeah, because you know what? It's funny. I was talking about this today on one of the Facebook pages. Back then, me and my guitar player used to say, those who can do and those who can't teach. Ha, 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 ha. We'll never be coaches. He makes his living as a guitar instructor. Makes a good living. Here I am, a vocal. I never wanted to be a vocal coach. I never did. I just wanted to be a rock star, So it's funny. I'm humbled by the thousands of people I've worked with in what's it been now, 23 years that I've been teaching voice.
Oh, yeah. Well, and what's amazing is, like, I mean, did it ever enter your mind until you had that person reach out for you, to help with that Dream Theater song?
No, I've never, and back up so James knows I love him. About the year 2000, my drummer was like, Keith Gilbert was like, you got to listen to Dream Theater. I started listening to Images and Words, and I was like, wow. This is amazing. This singer is freaking phenomenal. Then I got hooked. So when James and I met, not to back up, I never taught before that, but 2005, I met James because I had a website called The Voice Connection, and I was interviewing singers, and I contacted Dream Theater, email. You can't hardly get a hold of anyone back then. I said, I really want to interview you. I'm the guy Shattered Glass, and they weren't giving interviews. They were at the Gigantor.
I remember. Megadeth. I seen them on that tour.
Yeah, so I was there. Symphony X was there, another amazing singer, Russell Allen. And James actually emailed me. He says, listen, we're not doing interviews, but we're giving you an interview. And said the reason being, so we're not calling you a liar, but we just don't believe you can shatter glass with your voice. We just can't perceive that. So I took a wine glass, I left it in the car, and we got on the bus. Me and Keith were on the bus. And James, the first words out of his mouth, so you can really shatter glass with your voice. And I let out this big blood-curdling scream. He jumped. Keith said, you want me to go grab the wine glass? And James says, no need. no need. So that's how we got hooked up. A few years later, we started doing vocal lessons together, and we keep in touch. But no, it never occurred to me. I never wanted to be a coach. I never, even when I mean, I've been a coach since 96, but kind of loosely. And, you know, and I taught several hundred people up to Mythbusters. And I think at that point, I remember Jim called me. He says, listen, you put out this book, Raise Your Voice. It's a great book. You really need to focus. You are such an amazing coach. You need to focus on this and change your life and do what you want to do. And that's when, you know, I really heavily got into it around 2004, 2005.
So what do you feel, because you've gotten the chance to work with phenomenal singers.
Yep.
What do you feel like makes the difference between someone that's just a phenomenal singer and has great technique versus someone like you that feels that, you know, and before, like you said, you didn't even think about it. But now it's like, this is your life. Like, this is your life's work, your passion.
Well, do you mean like what separates an amateur singer from a professional singer?
Well, not as much that. So there's a lot of professional singers, but not all of them are coaches. Not all of them are teaching their techniques. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah. And I think a lot, they naturally, instinctively know what they do, or I think it's a calling. You know, we've had this conversation lately too. There are... I mean, as a coach, I like that I sing. I put out songs with Vendera and Stith and Angel Fire East, which you can hear on Jaime Vendera, on my website, JaimeVendera.com. But I don't necessarily, some are not going to agree with me. I don't think they go hand in hand. I don't think if you're a coach that you have to sing all the time. You should sing for your students, but if you're not out there touring, it doesn't matter. There are phenomenal singers, and I know a couple rock stars who've actually taught lessons, and I've heard their lessons, and they weren't good coaches. They can't relate to the student. They can't figure out what's going on because they just don't come down to that level. A new singer, they need to be encouraged. A couple of my first coaches, they didn't encourage me. One of my first coaches said, look, your voice breaks at an E above middle C. You're a bass. You're never going to sing any higher. You're done. Forget it, unless it's falsetto. And I could have cried, but I said, you know what? I'll show you. And funny thing is, I love this woman dearly, but I saw her years later after Mythbusters, and she says, you know what? I always knew you had it.
Sure you did. Yeah, that's where all that inspirational talk came earlier, right?
So, but that's actually, that's a blessing. She's actually helped mold who I am today because I inspire. I'm working with Brian Burkheiser from my Prevail, and they're one of like the biggest rock bands right now. They got he's a clean singer, and they got a screamer in the band. And Brian blew out his voice about a year and a half ago and had to have vocal cord surgery and was really depressed. They were working on this new album, Trauma. He didn't know if he could do it. He didn't want to go back out and tour. We did 2 Skype lessons. I flew to Detroit, worked with him for that record, and he'll text me every other day. He loves what he's doing. He says, I love singing again. I'm killing it every night. I feel amazing all the way through it. I can't thank you enough. But I think a part of it is encouragement, you know, really speaking to the singer and lifting them up so they can do what they have that potential to do.
Well, and for anyone that's listening that's maybe not a musician, especially not a singer, these professional musicians, I mean, I look at guys' tour schedules and think, I don't understand how people can do it. Because as a musician, I mean, it's one thing because we have an instrument that we utilize to produce what we're producing, whether it's a guitar, whether it's drums. And yeah, it can be taxing. But when you're a vocalist, it's your body. I mean, if your body, if you're sick, if you're down, I mean, that's money that you're risking. Because I remember our band years ago, we had the opportunity to play for X Fest one year. Yep. And I'll never...
I saw that. It was good.
Yeah. It was really, really cool. And one thing I remember is, I don't want to mention their name because I don't want to put them down. But there was a band there, and we got the chance to go backstage. It was like, oh man, we're rock stars now. We're eating people's sliced ham that we didn't have access to before. And one of the bands, their vocalist was, they had a great rock, you know, early 2000s vocalist, but his voice was gone. And I remember watching the show thinking, man, I just felt so bad for the guy. Because, like, what do you do? I mean, you can't cancel the show.
I want to say, I already know who it is.
I figured you probably did.
Now, here's a funny story. They were, this won't tell who it is, but I've talked to bands like Saliva and Shinedown. It's neither one of those. But this band was signed under Indigoot management, and I actually did a lot of work for them, like Kilhanna and Future Leaders of the World. And it was funny because they said, hey, this band's singer is having a lot of trouble on the road. Now, we're not booking for a lesson, but would you mind meeting with him? And I said, all right. So they had like a line, their manager was there and like people were wanting to sign. And I wasn't going to stay in the line. I walked up and said, hey, I'm Jaime Vendera. And I was called by Indigo. And he's like, all right, but get the back of the line. I said, I'm not here to get things signed. I was personally asked by Indigo management to come here and meet with him. And he said, well, yeah, okay, but I don't care. Get at the end of the line. And I told my buddy, I said, buddy Howard Turner, I said, forget it. I don't even care. And Indigo, they asked me, this is what happened. And he was horrible that night. And I felt so bad for him. I'm like, I'm not going to be mistreated like that.
Bad.
Yeah.
It was like really.
Yeah, because somebody actually kind of helped him sing. So if you remember. So.
Well,
yeah.
And that's, I don't think people realize like how taxing that could be. I mean, sometimes every other day, sometimes multiple nights. Whenever you think about vocalists, like, do you prescribe an ideal schedule, or is it, hey, I'm coming in to help with what your schedule is?
It can be either or. I'll tell you, it's all about vocal stamina. I'm a voice strengthening specialist, and a lot of times record companies call me because so-and-so can't hit the notes, they're tuning down, they had to cancel 2 gigs, the list goes on. And I've been there myself. I mean, it can be the air conditioning in the tour bus, it could be the humidity, it could be everyone's sick. I actually just recently got back from India, and the day that I landed in India, it just came on me out of nowhere, and I'm doing everything because I know everything to do. Lung infection, throat infection, fever. I'm burning up. They had to take me to a doctor over there. I did not even think I was going to be able to do this 4-hour workshop, and I had radio and all this stuff to do. And the day before the workshop, I was on radio, and I was like this. I had no voice. But come the day of the workshop, 4 hours, you could not even tell I was sick, except I was whining and telling people about it. But my doctor, who we developed this product with, which I'm sure we'll talk about in a minute, Dr. Ilter Denizoglu, he said, you know what? You're going to be fine. And said, this is a testament to how good your technique is, because you were sick and there's nothing you can do about the vocal cord edema that you're having right now. It's done. Sometimes you can overcome it, and there are ways to do that. But I had coughed so hard that I almost felt like my cords were bleeding, that I ruptured something, and I made it through it. So I will listen to a singer, and I pretty much know. I'm not a doctor. I'm not going to make that evaluation. But if I listen, I can say, okay, here's how we can fix it to get you through tonight, or we can go on. I remember I'm not Miles Kennedy's coach, so I want to clear that up because people keep thinking that. He's got a great coach, Ron Anderson, but I had met with him on the Blackbird tour, and he was sick. And he's like, what can I do? And in the book, I have something called the Fixer Elixir. And I said, well, here's what we're going to do. You're going to have your roadies go get this, and this, and you're going to gargle this stuff, and you're going to use it on stage. And you could see him on stage gargling on the side. And he texted me after the concert, after we talked. He says, listen, you saved me. I'm not even going to go to a doctor and do the antibiotics or prednisone now. He said, this thing has got me through it, and I'm going to make it. And so they thanked me on that album because it wasn't out yet. So there are ways to keep you in shape. But, we're human, and it's completely different than playing guitar. I mean, you get a little, you get calluses on your finger, you get calluses on your vocal cords, and you are foobarred.
Yeah. So. Oh, yeah. Well,
So,
and that's what's so amazing to me, because I think people don't think about that. They don't think about how powerful, especially if that's your livelihood. I mean, I think about how many singers that I follow on social media or whatever. You'll see they're traveling and they've got a mask on the airplane because they're doing everything they can to try and protect their livelihood, which is their voice. And so it's amazing to me. I figured, because when we came to you, I remember, I was a young kid, immature, young and dumb, and I wasn't used to working with someone that had such a professional, like, hey, we're going to work on warming up, we're going to work on strengthening, all those things. And just seeing the success that you've seen, like, all it took was people finding out about you, and then the word getting out and getting the chance to work with you. And I'm a big believer too. I think about cars. I can change an alternator because of YouTube. That's it. I am not a car guy. But when I get around friends that are passionate about it, that it's what they love doing, whether it's their profession or whether it's what they do after work, I can sit down and listen to it and talk about it forever. And that's why I wanted to make sure to get the chance to sit down with you, because I think this is something people would never even think about. So you had an incident happen.
Yes, I did.
Where your livelihood was hit pretty hard.
Yeah. So, and it's been almost 5 years. So I you speaking of, getting the word out there, I'm not a marketer. I do have a partner. We have a school called Vendera Vocal Academy. He does that. But before that, even the YouTube videos I put out, I just did them randomly. I'm not always when they're doing that. So I've done 60, 70 TV shows. I've gotten dozens of professional students just from word of mouth. And one of those shows I was doing was in Tokyo, Japan, and had to break 3 wine glasses. And so I'm holding the first one, and I knew this could possibly happen, but never, ever thought it would happen. So I'm screaming at the wine glass, and when it exploded, I turned it to smithereens, and a small sliver of glass shot back in my throat and got embedded in the wall of the back of my throat. It was stuck. I could taste blood. It felt like someone had taken a knife and stabbed me in my throat, but I had to continue on. I'm a professional, so I broke the other 2 glasses. I went back to the hotel, I yawned, and I looked, and it just looked swollen. It was bleeding. It wouldn't quit. I got sick on the plane on the way home, and I was sick for a couple weeks. I thought, okay, I'm going to be all right. And then this knot formed, and it was like the size of a small marble. And I went to ENTs. I had MRIs. I had CAT scans. And my ENT had retired, and he was amazing. But the ENTs I went to around here, sorry guys, I need better ENTs because it's your tonsils. One of them said, and I said, you mean the tonsils I had removed when I was 3? So no, it's not my tonsil. Well, it's your thinking. You had this and that. So I had searched the internet, and I had found a website called drvokes.com. I'm checking that out, and they had this therapy device, and it was for singers, but it was for anyone, school teachers, politicians, anyone who used their voice that had issues like bowed cords or nodules. And I reached out, and it was created by a ENT, a surgeon named Dr. Ilter Denizoglu, who is well known. He's known for doing surgeries and removing nodules with very, very little scarring. But he's also a singer. He has a degree in voice as well. And he was sick and tired of seeing the same patients come back like a year later. I got nodules again. Why? This is ridiculous. We need to teach you beyond doing a surgery so you don't come back to me. So he developed this therapy device, and it was based on something called lax Vokes therapy that was developed in Europe. But he took it so much farther and created Dr. Vokes therapy. And what it was, I don't have it here with me, but it was a little glass device, and it had 2 tubes on the top, and you would vocalize on one, and there would be water in the basin, and that water would bubble. And what it was doing, and I've seen this on film, it's amazing, bubbling that water was putting a cap on how much breath you could release, and the sound waves were actually coming back up that tube, down your throat, and massaging your vocal cords and the surrounding muscles. It is the freaky, you got to see it. If you go, you can see the cords vibrating. But when you do this, it looks like, if you've ever taken like an air compressor and held it up to your face and you go,
right.
It looks really funny. That's what it looks like. So it's literally massaging those cords, taking out the medial muscles, letting the cords kind of vibrate on their own, like by a vacuum. And I have seen, because they're documenting it, I have seen people with nodules completely heal and reverse without surgery from using this device.
Wow.
So he sent it to me, and I said, you know what? I love it. I said, but when I'm traveling, I'm packing 6 wine glasses. I don't need something else, a glass. I'm going to break it. I said, could you take that top piece and make it out of rubber or plastic so I can stick it on a bottle and I can carry it in my pocket? I said, heck, call it Pocket Vokes. I don't care. Make this for me. And he did, and it blew up. I mean, I have a former singer from Journey. I got TNT, Cinderella, Starset, Dream Theater. I got dozens of singers using this thing. And then I'm never satisfied. So I said, hey, I can't find a decent bottle. Make me a bottle too. So he did. And honestly, it's the only thing that keeps me going because I'm in pain every day. I still have pain. Luckily, Dr. Denizoglu checked me. He is my doctor. He checked me in Poland. The glass is out, but the damage is done. Now, he's done a therapy on me, and that knot has shrunk to less than the size of a pea, but I still have damage. So I'm hoarse every day. My throat hurts every day. Then it'll heal up. It'll clear up, and I use this all the time. So it is a lifesaver. I'm kind of jealous, man. I mean, another singer will use it, and they're like, wow, it's the greatest thing in the world. My voice is so good, and I'm like hanging my head down. I was like, gosh, I wish it would completely heal up because I know what they're feeling.
Yeah.
It's amazing. People say it's like steroids for the voice without taking steroids. And it is. I mean, I love this device.
Well, and it's amazing too, because I mean, us just talking about your story, a lot of pivotal points in your life came from either you not being satisfied where you're at, or even when, you know, you felt like, I'm not going to be able to go any further, where it was the vocal coach that you had that said, hey, you know, this is your range, it's not going to go any higher. Or when you damaged your voice and, you know, you had people telling you that your tonsils that didn't exist were the issue. And as a result, instead of just sitting back and saying, well, this is what it's going to be, it almost it seems like it motivated you to press forward and say, no, there's got to be more answers.
No, it did. I mean, that's why I searched out Dr. Eldred and the Zoglu. And I'm not going to say, I'm an upbeat person, we know that, but I do get depressed, and there's been times I'm like, I can't believe this happened to me, because even now, like with Angel Fire East, I got sick in Indiana back, and allergies around here, pollen's crazy, so it's been tough. On top of the vocal damage, the nerve damage that I still have, it's been tough for me to sing. And so I got depressed, and I know another coach, I believe it was Jeff Lonnie Stanfield, who I love dearly, he's an amazing coach. I think it was him that said to me, you know, you don't realize what you got to think of the positive. It was a blessing. If this hadn't have happened to you, this Pocket Vokes, or we got the Vendera Vokes now, this Pocket Vokes, the bottle, they would not exist.
Yeah.
Because I pushed this company to make it, because I had damage. I would never have sought out this company if it weren't for that. So, I mean, I look at that. I'm helping a lot of singers from what's happened to me. So if I don't fully recover, I'm okay with it. You know, I'm not a rock star. I'm not going to be out there touring. Though I'm probably going on tour with I Prevail in the summer, and Brian said the other day, hey, dude, you're going to have to be getting up to sing some of these songs with me.
Oh, that'll be cool.
Like, I have my Pocket Folks with me.
Well, and let's be real, Jamie. So you're helping out all these vocalists, but it's really just selfishness, because you're trying to help out yourself initially. It
is. I'm like, ooh, you know what? Because everybody's different. So when I'm working with them, even though I have a set of exercises, like I teach Jim Gillette's vocal power scales. I'm like the only person endorsed to do that, but Jim. I teach Elizabeth Sabine stuff, and again, the same issue there. And I teach my isolation method, which is like the slides I developed, and using exercises like going from falsetto to full voice, like mezzo de voce. But when I'm working with a student, I got to pinpoint, because everybody's different. You know, what is their issue? You know, are they too nasal? Are they having trouble with that break where the muscles aren't in balance and they need to work on, you know, better balance and better vocal strength? So I'm learning from them. Anytime I teach a student, I learn. So you never learn enough. I mean, I've never be that coach to be like, yeah, I know it all. You know, there's tons of amazing coaches out there. I'm just one of the piece of puzzles. So.
Well, and it's cool. Like I was making the joke earlier, but you know, you looking for things to solve your own issues turned into situations that you were able to help so many other people.
Yeah, and if you if you look at my book line, it's the same way. I mean, I'll have like the ultimate breathing workout, you know, vocal reset. We just wrote a book called Rebalance Your Voice for my brand, the Vendera Vokes, of this Dr. Vokes product, to help people learn what I did for my vocal therapy. Right before that, I was working with a guy named Joe Vitale. He was in the movie The Secret. He's a best-selling author. And Joe, out of the blue in 2010, said, you know, I've done everything. I've traveled the world. I make all this money, cars, blah, blah, blah. What haven't I done? I want to be a musician. I've loved music. I've never done it. He found me online as a coach. He got a guitar instructor. And in 3 months, he started in December 2010. In March of 2011, he had written, produced, and released a full album. And I was selfish. Like, how did he do it? Oh, and so I bugged him. I said, Joe, you got to write a book on how to do this. How did you do that? You know, so I can inspire other people. I want to pick your brain. And I've read all of his books, and he says, you know what? I love you, but I'm not going to do it. He says, you're going to write it, and then I'll co-author it. And it really made me take a hard look at myself and figure out what I wanted to do. And I wrote this program. And even looking at it, it was looking at like your fears, your beliefs. Do you still love music? What made you love music? And I pulled all this in and finding out what you want to do. And I passed it off to Joe, and he read it. He's like, this is phenomenal. I don't even know what to write. And it was so funny. It's like he really did write it in essence, because I was like, what would Joe do? What would he have done? And that's what I created. And I'm telling you what, when it made me look at myself it made me discover, what do I want to do? I want to be a touring vocal coach. And I kid you not, I hand it off to Joe. I get a call from India. There was a big producer named Preetam from Bollywood, who's like, he's won all these awards. He's like one of the biggest, music producers right now. He was on tour over here with 8 Bollywood singers. And they took me on tour with them to take care of their singers. That's why I've been in India so much.
Wow.
Because of that. And now going on tour with Prevail. It's like, that's what I want to do. I want to be on tour more often. And I'm used to going to a venue and working with the singer, but to be on tour in the bus with them, on the plane with them, that's what I want to do. So I am selfish. And anytime I write a book, it's like, how can I do this to help me?
yeah. Well, and it's interesting because I think sometimes there's a healthy type of selfishness,
Oh, absolutely.
That at the end of the day, if you did not help yourself in all these ways, you wouldn't have had this knowledge to be able to give to people,
Absolutely, yeah. And it has been a blessing. Again, I said I never wanted to be a vocal coach, but now that I am, I love it. I mean, I love it when a student emails me. He's like, oh my gosh, I've got 3 more notes in my range, or I'm over this hoarseness, or I'm singing night after night. I'm in a recording studio and I'm singing 8 hours, not losing my voice. That makes me happy. So
no, very, very cool. And the point of this podcast is really looking at where a person's journey's been and who they are now and where they come from and the things they've walked through. And us talking, just hearing the situations you've come into that could have caused you to quit really turned into pivotal moments that helped you go to the next level. And taking, I think a lot of times we as people, we're always going to have, whether it's people that are criticizing us or life, it's going to feel like life deals us a harsh hand. But it sounds like for you, a lot of that was, I'm going to turn this into momentum.
Yeah, and really, I got to give a credit to my mom, Linda Fagan, because growing up, we had a decent family. We didn't have a lot of money, and like synthesizers back in the 80s, they were expensive. A lot. And she knew I wanted one. And there's no way we could afford one. And I didn't know this. She was working with my uncle, Ron Hatzel, who's a musician too. And she'd been saving, and she put it in layaway, and she bought me Yamaha DX21 for my 15th Christmas, because my birthday's in December. So kind of the same thing. And she believed in me. And within a year, I'm playing out in clubs. And, when I decided I'm moving to Hollywood, and she was like, I was studying mechanical engineering, and I decided I don't want to do that. I want to be a musician. And she was by me. She was full force. I believe in you. You can do whatever you want to do. So I think she instilled in me that you can accomplish whatever you want. So no matter what's happened to me, I've always looked at, like, where's the silver lining? How can I take it to the next level? And even like I was talking to Brian from Prevail the other day. He called, I think it was Saturday because I got a studio in Columbus. I was leaving, and I called him. And he's like, I'm a little tired this morning. And I was like, of course. He said, everyone on the bus is sick. I'm not sick, but I'm afraid I'm getting it. And I pumped him up. I said, dude, you were going to freaking rock tonight. And he texted me like midnight that night. Dude, you're right. It was amazing. Thank you. We hung up off the phone, and I was so pumped up and excited. That's what I want to do for singers, because a lot of this is mental. And if you can get over that hump, you can accomplish anything. You can be an author, you can be a musician, you can be a songwriter, you can be whatever you want to be if you don't let anyone put those negative thoughts into your head. I remember when I was an ironworker, I was writing my first book, and I love this guy, and he didn't mean anything by it, but a friend of mine, we're at work, he says, hey, so how's the book coming along? And I've been about 2 years into it. And I said, well, it's kind of slow. And the other buddy said, you know what? You ain't never going to be anything but a dumb old iron worker. That's all you're going to be. That's all any of us are. You might as well get used to it. And I could have, let that sink in. I thought, all right, I'll show you. In a couple of years, here I'm on TV everywhere. And I've had ironworkers who was like, wow, I can't believe that. That's crazy. So you can do whatever you put your mind to.
No, it's very cool. And if there's one thing I could add to, I think it's interesting, because what you set out to do when you really got serious about vocals was one thing, and as the journey continued, you realized, man, there's a part of this world that I never thought that I'd be interested in, and now, like you said, that writing that book showed you.
Yeah, absolutely. I never wanted to be a vocal coach. That was never in my path. Those who can do, those who can't teach, and it just, I think what it was for me, is I had read some books and watched some videos from other coaches. I've read some good ones, but I've read and watched some very bad ones. And I thought, oh my gosh, there's so much misinformation out there. I want to do something about it. And so it was actually more for myself. I was going back and studying books from the 1800s, true opera.
Really?
And I would go to a library. And there was a great coach in the 50s, 60s, Herbert Chisari. You couldn't find his books anywhere, like The Voice of the Mind. So I go to the public library, and I'm like, look, I got to have this book. And that was back when we were like, okay, we found it. It's in New York. They're going to ship it to us, and then you'll have it for 30 days. And that's what I did. I took notes. I studied. It was crazy. I was just pulling it in, and I was studying reflexology and yoga and everything because I know the body's the instrument. It's not just those little vocal cords. You got to look at everything. And so I was actually preparing, and this was even years before I decided to write a book. I'm thinking about it. This is back in like 93, 94. I was just collecting notes for myself. And then when I did decide to write a book, I was like, wait a minute. I've got all these old notebooks of all this information I was keeping over the years when I was getting those books from the library. I pulled those out and started creating my program.
Wow, that's amazing. So you had tons of material already. Listen, we could go down 100 rabbit trails. I mean, now you've got me wanting to ask about vocal history and how, things have changed, but
that's another podcast.
That's another podcast. Listen, Jamie, thanks so much, man. It's so good just seeing you again, my friend.
You too.
So until next time.
See you around.